All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this week. My name is Ben Coffey. I will be the host of today's Smart Water Wednesday, and I am so thrilled to have with me Chad Rowley, who is with the design group for Heritage Landscape out of Omaha, Nebraska. Morning, Chad.
Good morning. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So one of the things that I always like to start our conversation out with, this is a show for water nerds by water nerds. And so I always like to hear when I bring a special guest on, I work with them to kind of decide what the content will be for their episode. And I want to know what it is about multiple points of connection that is a daily part of your conversation. Why is this important?
Well, we've dealt with a lot of projects that have complex point of connections, and to find resources and solutions for those have been very important when you come into those situations. So knowing what you have out there and what you have available from multiple brands and multiple solutions, it's very key and very important to provide those solutions for the end user or for whoever is needing those solutions, municipalities, whomever.
That's awesome. Perfect. So I'm going to share my screen here. We're going to get started. Oh, just kidding. I did not get all the way to the start. All right. So we've already introduced the special guest. Thanks for being here. And like Chad said, flow management is so often a part of the value proposition that we present with the WeatherTRAK solution. And it's important for contractors or distributors or anyone who's potentially looking at a new WeatherTRAK installation that wants to add flow into that value proposition or add flow onto that site. It's important for you to know all of the nuances that go along with the different products that we provide and kind of the scale of each level of WeatherTRAK. So we're going to go through the different offerings and the different management capabilities in terms of point of connection and flow management, looking at each individual controller that we offer through the WeatherTRAK irrigation family. All right, so again, just to be pointed about this, we are talking about adding flow sensors and master valves. That's a whole conversation unto itself. We have a great episode of Smart Water Wednesdays. Danny Smith and I talked about how to choose the right flow sensor for your site. That's a whole separate conversation. But what we want to focus on today is how the control system is compatible with that flow sensor, right? Or that point of connection or that point of management in the system. So while we are talking about these devices, that it's only kind of peripheral to what we're getting at today. And that is really focused on the control product and the features and the level of flow management that each of the WeatherTRAK controllers can provide. So we're going to start here with the LC. This is base model. This is light commercial, designed for a very simple site, right? Designed for small parks, small medians. Your friend Rob Wassam is famous for selling this to small convenience stores and gas stations that get that scalable effect, can provide water management throughout the entire organization with just these small controllers on what are initially small footprint sites, right?
Yes.
Do you use the LC, Chad?
Yeah, LC is a controller that's very attractive price-wise, very competitive for those situations where we have one point of connection with one controller, but still be on the WeatherTRAK platform as a whole. So it's been a great tool, and it's a really easy controller, nice controller, modulated. So yeah, it's been definitely a staple for those smaller projects where it fits into.
And we'll come back to that in a second after we talk about the capacity of the flow on the LC, right? So with the LC, this is entry-level flow management in my eyes, right? This is the most basic offering from WeatherTRAK. So with the LC, which is our low cost or our light commercial offering, it is designed for the most simple flow applications that WeatherTRAK is capable of monitoring, right? As such, it's important to understand that flow management is optional. So out of the box, unless you order a flow key, the flow sensor is automatically grayed out or turned off. The hardware is capable of listening to a flow sensor, but it does require a optional flow key. Oh, let me see. I put these slides out of order. But the key that you're seeing here, this little rubber key, plugs right into your board and opens up the capabilities of the flow management devices, right? So you won't be able to listen to the flow sensor until you plug in that LC flow key. And that's what we mean by flow is optional on the LC controller. So this is just my controller at my house. And you can see that the flow key is a little bit different than the station keys. The station keys are blue up here. I've got 2 of those. And then right next to that, I have the white key that is the color distinguishes it as a flow key. It's different function. So you definitely need it to be a flow key if that's what you're looking for. And when you plug in that flow key, it opens up the flow port and your LC controller will be ready to listen to a flow sensor. Okay, so that is an important step in understanding the offering of the flow management of the LC. The other thing to understand is that the LC is designed for a very simple site. So like Chad mentioned, the flow capabilities are limited to a single point of connection, single controller setup, right? So most of the time in the small footprint, that's what you get. You've got one backflow that runs one main line and one controller that operates the whole site. So that is usually 90+% of the time what you need on a small site, but it is a limitation. If you need more than that, we'll get into the details of the larger controllers. If you have a more complex setup, you're going to need to graduate into one of the bigger controllers. Chad, do you have anything to add to that?
No, not really. I mean, you think you hit it on the head. You know, we've got some other projects. You know, Nebraska Department of Roads with the rest stations are using a lot of these, and we're going to continue to push that. Again, simple, nice, smaller sites, one point of connection, and one controller. So it's a very good controller for those type of situations.
Yeah, and from my perspective, it's a great controller to add into your WeatherTRAK portfolio for places like cities, right? Cities that have parks that are all shapes and sizes. Some of them need the biggest, most elaborate WeatherTRAK flow setups. Some of them don't. Like we have little pocket parks that are just a few stations, but we want to add the visibility and the management that WeatherTRAK can provide. The LC is a great option in that scenario. And
you still have the WeatherTRAK platform, you know, central control that works the same with the LC as it does with the Pro 3. So
right, and it's all integrated into the same display. It's all
exactly
easy to see, easy to access. So when you're on WeatherTRAK, you'll only notice the difference in those specific features where we're limited, right? We won't offer you multiple points of connection if that isn't available.
And you don't have to have a $7,000, $8,000 controller for a small site, right?
Exactly right. This is designed to be price competitive with some of the smaller, less well-known irrigation or smart controllers in the marketplace.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's what I got for the LC. Pretty basic stuff. What I did want you and I both to tag team on is what does that actually mean? When we talk about adding a flow sensor to a LC, what is the big value proposition? What do you get mostly from that?
You get visibility of the water flow of the system. So if there's a leak in the main line or leak on a zone, it'll actually alert you and let you know. It'll shut it down so you don't have any of those issues with water waste. Also, it gives you an efficiency management, right? So an ability to manage a site and not have to be at the site or wait to hear from somebody else that there's an actual issue. You're alerted right away. You can shut the system down and you can come and take care of that problem when you need to.
That's exactly right. So it's important to understand that even at the LC, we're not compromising any of the station level features, right? We're still giving you all the mainline protection as well as station based flow, where we can see, say station 10 is supposed to run at 40 gallons a minute and last night it ran at 60, right? And then somebody's mowed over the sprinkler heads or something. That level of management, that level of visibility exists even in this base model.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so let's move on. Ed is giving you a shout out.
I see him.
Let's see. Let's go to the Pro 3. Okay, so the Pro 3 is the older brother, right? This is the middle of the WeatherTRAK family. This is really the workhorse of the WeatherTRAK family. You'll see this on just about every big box retail store from sea to shining sea. This is kind of our standard level commercial grade controller. So this is real WeatherTRAK water management. We see it on schools, we see it on cities, we see it really in just about every application. And when we move up to the Pro 3 level flow management, it opens up a bunch of capabilities. So where with the LC, we were limited to that one point of connection, one controller setup. With the bigger sites, we inherit a much more complex irrigation system. And that is something that the Pro 3 is ready to manage to a certain level. So what we get with the Pro 3 is the ability to listen to more than one flow sensor. So for example, if you have one main line that is fed by two different points of connection, the Pro 3 is capable of listening to both of those flow sensors and managing the flow for the entire system.
Yep.
And a couple of nerdy details here that you got to know. The conventional option, the conventional wire controller, is capable of as many as 4 points of connection. The two wire is standard. If you buy a 2-wire controller, we can listen to 4 flow sensors standard out of the box. But for a conventional wire controller, you need to know what you're doing to get this done right.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that's what we're talking about here, right? We've got this controller here. It's listening to 2 different points of connection, 2 different management points. We're tracking the water coming into that main line from 2 separate locations. And the Pro 3 can just manage that. But what you need to know is on a conventional wire controller, there is minimum station counts that you have to hit to open up these flow features. Okay, so let's see, I built in a cheat sheet for you. So we're really talking about this station output board, and the key thing to know on a conventional wire Pro 3 is the number of flow sensors your controller is set to manage depends on the number of these 24 station output boards that you have in your control product. So standard out of the box, any WeatherTRAK starting at 12 station has this one port where you can plug in a flow sensor. So any WeatherTRAK Pro 3 out of the box is capable of managing 1. However, if you have 2 points of connection, we need to graduate to a 36 station controller, right? The limitation is we need the extra ports to plug those flow sensors in. So on a 36 station controller, we have a full separate 24 station output board and a second set of wire plugs where we can plug in our flow sensor, right? The red and black wires of our flow sensor.
So basically what you're saying, I think, is if you had 24 stations, but you had 2 points of connection, you would have to get another 24 station output board to
That's
be able
exactly
to
it.
provide the two points of connections capabilities to flow manage both of those.
Totally. So let's
Yep.
drill into that for 1 second, okay? Because
Yep.
this is the most common misstep, right? Most contractors, even distributors, are trying to get WeatherTRAK on a site, and they look at the number of stations that they want to manage as the prerequisite for the type of controller that they want.
Yeah.
But if you have more than one flow sensor, we've got to bump up the station counts. Even if you don't need more stations, you need more boards to be able to plug in those master valve and flow sensor devices. So
Yep.
the most confusing one for me is the second board, because there is this key, this optional second flow sensor and master valve key that needs to be plugged in to that second board to open up the capabilities of that second flow sensor. So not only do you need to have a minimum of a 36 station controller or 2 of these 24 station output boards in your device, but we also need to add this second flow sensor and master valve key to make sure that the software can recognize that second flow sensor and we can get that run in the way that we want it to run. So that's a super common thing to run into. And to your point, if I have an 18 station site and I have 2 points of connection, I can't qualify that as an 18 station controller. I need to bump that guy up to a 36 station controller with the all important second flow sensor and master valve key.
Yes.
Beyond that, if I have 3 points of connection that I need to manage, the 72 station controller has 3 of these 24 station output boards. So I've got 3 ports to plug in flow sensors. And then last but not least, the 96 station controller has 4 boards. And so 4 different places where I can plug in those flow sensors. Makes sense? Does that?
Yeah, no, I get it. It took a little while, as you mentioned, on some projects when we first got together with and started quoting some of the larger projects to understand that. But yourself and Rob and Ed did a great job of helping me understand and make sure I got the items quoted that needed to be quoted. So you guys are there to help, but it's always good to know that information, or at least have an idea that, hey, I remember that there's something I need to talk to them about. So this is very good information.
And then there is one thing about the Pro 3 that we need to detail, because it changes with the OptiFlow. With the Pro 3, as you see in this example, if I have multiple points of connection that I'm managing, Pro 3 can actually manage as many as 4 separate main lines as well, right? Yeah. So if you have a point of connection that has its own dedicated main line, and on this side of the property, you've got a different point of connection that operates a different main line, the Pro 3 can manage that up to 4 points of connection and up to 4 separate main lines in either single point of connection configurations or looped configurations, all sorts of complexity that we can mix and match there through the flow setup that the Pro 3 is capable of managing. And the reason we talk about that now is because it gets a little more intricate when we talk about the OptiFlow. Chad, anything else about Pro 3 that I missed?
I think the only thing that I can think of, and it's the Pro 2. I know there's a lot of Pro 2s out there, so just know that there's a Pro 3 upgrade kit to get them up to the Pro 3 capabilities. So that would be the only thing. I know there's a lot of them out there, and we had sold quite a few of them on some projects. So just know that those kits are out there for the Pro 3.
And from my perspective, just know that we are trying to sell that as close to cost as we can. We don't want to keep digging into your pockets, but the upgrade from Pro 2 to Pro 3 is as close to cost as we can provide to get full capabilities, right? Yep. The Pro 2 was on 2G network and had some hardware limitations that we have since solved with the Pro 3. So it's if you've got Pro 2, it is outdated and ready for update.
Yep, that would be the only thing I have, but otherwise, yeah, I think you got it again, so we're good.
All right, so now we get to the big dog, and the big dog on the block is impressive, right? I heard my CEO, Chris Spain, say, we want to be able to measure flow on every WeatherTRAK site. And as such, he put forth a project to create OptiFlow. That was before the OptiFlow days. But OptiFlow is designed to manage the most complex setups that we have. And so no longer does all of the flow management have to run through a single controller. With OptiFlow, we have flow management in the cloud, which allows for a couple of great advantages. First of all, it allows a network of controllers to manage the same mainline, right? So you have one controller that manages your point of connection and other controllers that operate stations but need to access the information from that master valve and flow sensor, from that point of connection, right? And so this is the most obvious upgrade in the transition from Pro 3 to XR, right? This level of complexity is a huge jump when we go to flow management in the cloud. And so because the controllers are able to share that information, we start to look at, it goes beyond just the physical limitation of a single controller. It all becomes one network or one management system, and the intricacies of each individual controller become less and less important. It is important to understand it's the same infrastructure as the Pro 3. So the same qualification of boards at a controller still exists. So if you're running points of connection back to a single controller can manage up to 4 if you have either a 2-wire or a 96 station controller.
Right.
But what OptiFlow does is it blows the doors off of that, right? If I can have as many as 10 different controllers on this system listening to as many as 4 points of connection that are feeding this main line. Right. So it is the variety of systems that this can be compatible with is just enormous, right? It just takes that last 15 or 20% of the most complex systems and really gives us an opportunity to talk about what WeatherTRAK can do. And one of the big features on that is flow optimization. Flow optimization is not something that you get on a anything less than an OptiFlow controller. Flow optimization is super cool because it allows us to use the flow information in a unique way, rather than watching a station and telling you if a single station is using too much or the system is using too much. We actually add flow information into the scheduling of a site. So with flow optimization, an OptiFlow controller knows how many gallons per minute your mainline can provide, and it will optimize the schedule to keep your mainline flowing at its capacity, right? Yep. So if you have 100 gallons per minute to use, you can run as many stations at a time to keep your system running at 100 gallons per minute to minimize the amount of time that it takes to irrigate a large or complex site. Yeah. So when we get into the options, right? The single controller or single point of connection is always an option. If that flow optimization is important to you, we can do that on a single controller or a single point of connection site very easily with OptiFlow. But what we can also do is go in and start to manage multiple points of connection on this. See a much more complex mainline, 2 different feeds, managing a looped mainline with stations dispersed throughout. And that OptiFlow can do that. The Pro 3 can do that, but where we differentiate is here, right? Now I have that same mainline configuration, but I have 2 different points of connection that I need to manage, going back to 2 different controllers, right? With the Pro 3, it always has to run through a single controller, but with the OptiFlow, we're managing the network. So all we have to do is get every point of connection outfitted with a master valve and flow sensor, And then each one of those devices run back to a WeatherTRAK controller. And then in the cloud, we can manage them all together as a network rather than a series of controllers all operating one thing at a time. And so it really does just blow the doors off of the compatibility. Again, I think our most recent tests show that we can manage. We've only tested up to 10 manager controllers, or 10 controllers that manage points of connection, right? So we've only tested up to 40. If you have more than 40, good luck. That it gets a little heavy on the complexity, but we also have a limitation of thousands of stations. I think 2,000 is the current tested limit on an OptiFlow network. So it doesn't really matter how many controllers we're adding into that main line. It's how many stations the cloud is capable of managing. All right. What did I add anything else? Oh, yes, this is the great example, a shining example of all of the different possible configurations of OptiFlow. Right here, I've got a point of connection, just single point of connection, single controller. OptiFlow can do that, absolutely. If you need to optimize flow on a single 96 station controller, boom, even a 48 station controller, OptiFlow can help you fit into tight water windows. But we can also have a single controller feeding a network of controllers, or have multiple controllers listening to multiple points of connection. This is where we need to be very clear, though. There are still limits. We don't fit compatibility with all existing feature sets. I would have a look at any hardware to see if OptiFlow is a solution, but we don't necessarily do everything that all of the competitors do. And a couple of the most common missteps that I see in OptiFlow, the oversells or the overreach that think OptiFlow does and it doesn't. And the first of those is one mainline per controller. And this is super confusing because Pro 3 does manage multiple mainlines. OptiFlow does not. So all of the stations on a controller need to share in a mainline. And we can slice and dice that mainline in a lot of different ways. But the OptiFlow controller is not capable currently of managing two separate mainlines on one controller. So if you have two main lines, you're going to need two OptiFlow controllers to manage that. And the other overstep that I see pretty commonly is what I call submaning. So if you had this system, for example, right, we've got this big trunk main line coming in from a pump somewhere. I have guys that want to add a master valve and flow sensor onto the pump station to see what's happening on this main line, but then each little submain has its own flow sensor and master valve. A good rule of thumb with WeatherTRAK is we don't want to measure the same water twice, right? So in this scenario, we would be able to manage this system as 4 separate main lines that share a source, but we would not be able to add a flow sensor and master valve onto that source and therefore have one flow sensor after another in the system and measure the same water twice. Chad, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I like the fact that you mentioned that there are some limitations, and as we spoke before, not all sites are exact. So go through them, have conversations, and figure out what solution is best out there for your customer. So
yeah, absolutely. And again, so this conversation is really designed for those folks who are looking at sites and thinking about adding WeatherTRAK, right? And just breaking beyond that concept that the station count, the all information that we need to qualify the right control product. We need to not only manage all of those stations, but also make sure that we're managing all of those points of connection if flow monitoring is a priority.
Yep.
Awesome. So Chad, thank you so much. We are
Yeah, thanks for
zooming in
having
on
me.
time here. So with just a few minutes left, I want to give you the question that I give all of my first time guests. We have a standard protocol here, and I ask all of my first time guests, what does WeatherTRAK save you?
Well, I would say WeatherTRAK saves me or gives me the opportunity to have great conversations with people that are looking for a way to manage their irrigation system, whether it be for water savings or time savings or efficiency savings. It just gives me a great tool to be able to have those conversations with people. So it's a pleasure to work with you and your company, and just enjoy your product line.
And I love that because in my experience as the field guy, right, I know that the conversation is the most important part, right? Water management is a process, it's not a product. And so the WeatherTRAK does give us all of the tools that it takes to kind of continue throughout the life of a project, continue to explore what good water management looks like. Maybe we start off with just central control, but add flow monitoring, but add high efficiency field stuff or plant materials or any of those conversations that water managers can have. I like the idea that WeatherTRAK gives you the foundation to have those conversations, gives you the right data to be able to quantify what the path of water management looks like. So
yep, I agree. That. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let me wrap it up here. Let me go into we're always here for support, right? I always want to plug my support team. If there's something that we can do to help you, please let our customer support team know at either the 800 number or at support@hydropoint.com. And we have a whole myriad of training resources available for you as well, both online certified training as well as YouTube channel full of content. And if you want live training or webinar style training, available for that as well. Next week, I'm totally stoked. Next week, we have one of the co-founders of HydroPoint coming on the show. Peter Carlson is our Chief Technology Officer. And I did an episode about the mad limit switch a couple of weeks ago, and my irrigation nerds went nuts for the super nerdy content, which gave me this idea. Peter Carlson has a way of combining the feature called User with ET with the feature called Days of the Week by Month, two separate features that when they come together provide a very unique management experience and a whole new way of water managers to think about scheduling their sites for specific applications. So I think that my water nerds are going to love that. Plus, I'm going to love having Peter Carlson on the show. I also want to take the opportunity to plug my ongoing project. We're going to wrap up this season with a 5-part series called Dropped, the WeatherTRAK Tournament of Champions. We talked about who our contestants were last week. I just wanted to give you a quick update about what is actually happening, right? What we're going to do is we're going to turn the weekly webinar, the Smart Water Wednesday, into a game show. And the game show is going to be a WeatherTRAK trivia challenge, right? So every episode, we're going to start with 4 contestants, and there's going to be 3 elimination rounds, leaving 1 winner at the end. We're also going to, I'm going to have a guest host or a co-host in this event. My friend Brady Pitcher from Sprinkler Supply in Utah is going to kindly give us his comedic services. The Ben and Brady show is a well-rehearsed one, so I couldn't think of anybody I'd rather have next to me to co-host. We put many hours in training together, so excited for that. And then so the game show will be WeatherTRAK trivia focused on the WeatherTRAK system. Current, we're not going to make you know all of the history, but we're going to test you on things like WeatherTRAK alerts or the scheduling engine or the reports, kind of the training content that Smart Water Wednesdays is designed to provide will come through in the content that we're asking of these questions, of these contestants, right? So you'll, as a listener, you'll still pick up some good WeatherTRAK nuggets that you might be able to use. And we'll try and keep it light and keep it fresh, and just try and mix up how we're presenting this training content to keep it entertaining for you. So you can depend on us to keep looking at it from fresh eyes. So, and then the trivia tournament, the Tournament of Champions, we're going to have a round robin, 4 rounds, the distributors, the California water managers, the Brightview team, and the HydroPoint team, 4 separate episodes. The winner of each one of those episodes will advance to the championship round, where the prizes get better and the questions get harder. So that's kind of the nickel tour of the setup of the dropped WeatherTRAK Tournament of Champions. So I will continue to update you, and as we develop stuff, I'll keep you posted on how that's going. In the meantime, thank you all for joining me this week. Look forward to seeing you next week. And Chad, very special thank you for making time and sharing this conversation with me. Do you have anything you want to wrap up with or send everybody out on?
Just want to say thank you, and everybody have a great day.
Sounds great. Thanks, everyone.